Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to one who are watching us from all over the world. On behalf of RPS Group of Institutions, I would like to welcome all the participants for today's session and our guest speaker, Mr. Ravindra Yadav. Mr. Ravindra Yadav is currently working as CEO at YCC TBI. Earlier, he was associated with Manipal University as CEO at Atal Incubation Center. He also worked with EMPI as Technical and Outreach Officer. So with his brief introduction, I would like to request Mr. Ravindra to take over the session. Please, sir.
So we will start with the innovation. So I'm basically from the innovation side only. And for the first session, it's innovation and startup ecosystem. All right. So okay. So in August 2015, our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, he has announced the launch for the National Flagship Initiative, that is Startup India. And that is mainly to encourage and motivate the startups of our country. He actually was dreaming to make our country as a job creator instead of job seeker. So from there it got started. Then he kept the foundation for the AIM Atal Innovation Mission and other incubators as well. And then it all goes from that time. So now coming to the startup. So before startup, I think we should know about the entrepreneur. What an entrepreneur is, right? So who is an entrepreneur? Basically, an entrepreneur is an individual who identify any kind of problem statement into the society. Like if somebody was moving into the society or sitting at home or sitting in the college office somewhere, anywhere, and founding any kind of problem statement and try to find out the solution for the same. So that will be known as an entrepreneur who works to fulfill that problem statement, right? And when he set up a company and make it a scalable business model, so that is known as a startup, right? So that was a general concept of a startup. Now coming to the definition of a startup as per the government of India. So there are certain criteria or parameters as per which we define the startup. First thing is age. So a company which is incorporated is between 10 years. Say post 10 years, we can't call a company as a startup. Once you register a company, you need to register for the DPIIT certification. I will let you know what DPIIT is. So once you are DPIIT certified, you will be known as a startup. And that will be 10 years from the date of incorporation. So post 10 years, you will come out of the category of a startup. Now coming to the entity type. So what entity actually Startup India accepts is private limited company, a limited liability partnership, or a partnership. Now to the turnover. The company should not cross a turnover of 100 crore in a fiscal year, means in just the previous year. So if it crosses, it comes out of the category of a startup. Nature of innovation. Yes, there should be something innovative into the company which they are developing. Otherwise, I will just give a simple example. We can open a normal grocery store, right? A Kirana store basically. And we can also open an online Kirana store, right? So there was a difference between these two. The online Kirana store, there was something innovation added into it, that it was converting it into the online, right? And if we speak about a normal Kirana store, that was nothing innovative into it. So we will call a startup as the one who is online rather than the one who is offline. So that some kind of innovation is required to get you the DPIIT certification, right? And if we are having a previous company and we are trying to break it into some other companies, and then we will try to register it for the Startup India, we are not going to get any kind of certification from the government in that. So these are basically the requirements of the government to give you a certificate of the Startup India. Post that only your company will be eligible to get the benefits of a startup. Now, as I told, the Startup India registration, earlier it was known as DIPP certification, that is Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion. Now it is known as DPIIT, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. Right? So that is actually also known as Startup India certificate. Now coming, what are the basically the benefits? Why should we go for the registration of the startup? What we are going to get out of it? So there were certain benefits which I have. I'm going to show into the slides. So these are certain of the benefits: self-certification, tax exemption, single window clearance with the mobile app, patent protection, relaxed rules, incubator setup. The incubators are set up to help those startups. So we will explain. We will see into this. The first one is self-certification. There, for the companies, basically the government has made certain labor laws and environmental. If you are a startup, the inspection against 6 labor laws and 3 environmental laws were relaxed by the government. Means you can self-certify yourself that you are basically following the compliances as per those laws, and the government will accept. They are not going to inspect those particular laws. So that was the self-certification that can be done by a individual startup. Coming to the IPR, startup patent, basically 3 things come: patent, trademark, and copyright. Right. So for the startup, what the government has done is, for registering a patent, there was around 80% of rebate given to the startup. For example, if I will say, if I am an individual and I'm going to register a patent, so that may cost, including the attorney fees, around somewhere around say 70,000 to 1 lakh rupees. But if I am a startup, that patent will be going to be registered onto my startup date, and I have to pay around rupees in the starting itself. I'm not going to get it reimbursed, but in the initial only I have to pay 15 to 20,000. That was around 80% rebate was given from the government and for filing a patent. Similarly, for the trademark also, there was a 50% rebate on the trademark and copyright. So also the government has given the certain rules to the offices that for the startup there will be a fast tracking of startup patent application. Initially, when we file the patent as an individual, it takes months, many months. But if we are a startup, it will go on a fast track and we will get the patent granted very soon. Coming to the tax exemption. For the first 3 years, if you are a startup company, you don't have to give any kind of tax to the government. If you are not a startup and you are just a company, in that case, you need to pay the taxes from the first year starting. But for the startup, it was relaxed for 3 years, first 3 years. Easy winding up of company. Sometimes it happens that because of some XYZ reasons, because of some internal reasons, some bankruptcy or some other reasons, you have to close the company. So if you are a company that was supposed to be closed within a time span of 4 years, up to 4 years, it was supposed to be closed. But if you are a startup, the government has made a regulation, made a rule that will be closed within the 90 days. If you register your company as a company closer by today, the government has to close the company of a startup. So that was a relaxation given from the government. Okay, public procurement norms. So there were certain, say, GEM portal, government e-marketplace, some other portal was there, right? So there, when a normal company registers for it, either have to go for some deposit of some security money and some norms were there. But for the startup, those things were relaxed. You can directly register there without paying any kind of fees, and you can start selling your product. So the procurement norms, which is made for the startups, were relaxed up to a great extent in those cases. Now coming to the benefits for the women entrepreneurs. Okay, so women entrepreneurs, in the name of startup ecosystem, we call them as a womanpreneur. Not women entrepreneur, but womanpreneur. So there were certain additional benefits which are given to the womanpreneurs from the government. There was some monthly allowance given to the womanpreneurs, and that starts from 10,000 to now even it was 25,000 per month for 1 year only. So just suppose I am having a startup and we are 3 directors in it, and there are 2 womanpreneurs and 1 male entrepreneur were there in it. So both the womanpreneurs are going to get a stipend from 10 to 25,000 per month, depending on the state. So different states have different policies. So according to them only, they are going to provide the stipend to those womanpreneurs. And it was basically stipend. You don't have to return it to the government. That's what I mean to say. So up to 1 year, you are going to get that. Next, the government has made certain schemes for the women entrepreneurs, right? You can get certain loans or the loan kind of benefits from the different banks for your own startup. Specifically for the womanpreneurs, I'm saying. It's not about the, you can say, male entrepreneur. It's for the womanpreneurs. So some of them are like Bharatiya Mahila Bank business loan that is provided to the womanpreneurs for their running their own business. Mudra Yojana scheme was there, Dena Shakti scheme was there, Udyogini scheme was there, Sant Kalyani scheme was there, Mahila Udyam Nidhi scheme was there. And women entrepreneurship platform were there, which provide additional benefits to the women trainers. We will discuss about in detail about these schemes some other day because of the time constraint. We have to stick with certain topics only. Now coming to the startup challenge. Okay, you have made a startup, you have got all these benefits, but there was also certain challenges for the startup in India. And yes, in startup ecosystem, we call that if your startup gets failed, it's a kind of learning which you get, a kind of experience which you get for your next company to initiate. So these are certain challenges for the startup: lack of mentorship, execution, how to execute. If you have designed a product, how to execute it, how to go for the marketing strategies, funding support. Yes, it is there. Planning a proper, if a proper planning was not there for your own company, then it will be difficult. Lack of innovation. If it is not an innovative product, then the user are not going to buy it. In that case, the startup will get failed. Human resources and poor ethics. So if we see the current scenario in India, there were around 95% of the startups which get wrap up within the first 3 years only. So what I feel is the max, say, there were these, even though there were these reasons for those kind of, failure of those startup, but there was a main reason, that is actually the mentors. If a startup will get a proper mentorship from a proper mentor, like he or she can guide the startup, what to launch, how to launch, in how many phases it is launched, what the strategy they are supposed to accept, and they are go to market strategy. So these are basically the kind of things which the mentor tells the startup. And yes, many of the time it was observed that the startup won't look for the mentorship program. They basically look for the funding support. Nowadays, the government has provided many funding opportunities for the startup. You can get those funding from the government under different schemes. So the mentorship is something which is actually required by the startup, and you have to search for a correct mentor for your startup in order to run it into the market. Right. So that was the main reason, I would say. A similar, if I would give an example, you guys are coming into this college for learning out something, and you have the faculty. Those faculties are basically the mentors for you guys. And in our ecosystem, the mentors, we have the mentors for the startup, right? So the same, right? Okay. So next topic is basically the angel investment and VC funding opportunity for early stage entrepreneurs, right? We have just listened about the funding issues and those kind of things. So what options we have, we are going to look into this particular session. Early stage entrepreneurs mean the entrepreneurs or the startups who are not gone to the early traction or the growth stage. So those are basically the early stage, right? Now, what are the ways for funding to a startup? There are certain ways. Some of them are I have listed here. Sorry. The first one is bootstrapping. Bootstrapping is something which you have to fund by your own. If you are putting your own fund, own pocket money into your company, that is known as bootstrapping. Second is crowdfunding. All of you have seen the examples of crowdfunding nowadays on the YouTube or something like that, right? The YouTubers used to show some person who is actually needy, right? And they ask for getting some kind of fund for that particular needy person. So that is kind of crowdfunding, which you ask the people into the society to help the particular person. So that is crowdfunding. You can raise the fund even through this crowdfunding. Then the angel investor. So angel investors are basically the individuals which have a very good support of finance behind them, right? Venture capital. These are basically the professional organizations which have the fund and which go with a particular closure to invest into the startup. Next, incubators and accelerators. As I told you, the incubator, some other day we can go for a concept of what the incubator and what the accelerator is. But the incubators and accelerators, the government provides the fund to the incubators and accelerators to help the startup that can be utilized by the startup. There are government programs that offer the capital to the startups. It will be in the form of, say, debt. It will be in the form of equity, or it may be into the form of grant. Next, the bank loans. We have shown in the first session, there were certain schemes available for the women trainers. And yes, there are certain schemes available from the banks for even the male entrepreneurs also. So these are basically the ways for funding to start. Now coming to the angel investor and venture capital. So what basically the differences were there into the angel investors and venture capital. So angel investors, as I told, that it's an individual who is having much funding available with them and who would like to invest into the startup. While the venture capitalists are a kind of registered companies who is having a sufficient funds with them, and they go for the providing that fund to the startup. Right? Next, now specifically, if we look into both the things here, if we go for the criteria, as per the criteria, first thing is source of fund. So for a venture capital, the source of fund is the company. So that money is not from that individual, but from different organizations. So those ventures actually collect the funds from different organizations. So suppose we are 5 friends, right? And all of them having crores of rupees. So I will register the company. I will take those money from my friend that I'm going to invest that into the startup, and I'm going to give you a return of this much. So I will collect those funds from them, and will invest into my company and then go to the startup. While an angel investor is a private individual. If I'm having crores of rupees, I would like to invest. That where to invest? I will go into the startup ecosystem and can invest this fund into the startup. Now, coming to the responsibility. If I am an angel investor, that I am going to play a significant role for that investment because that is my own fund, right? But if I am a venture capitalist, the main responsibility is of the management and owner. Ultimately, it's their fund. I am basically employed into that venture capital. Right? Next, investment experience and capacity. So the venture capitalists, they having very experienced person. They actually hire the experienced person for the investment purpose. So they are having considerable experience for that particular category. If you go for the angel investors, they are having the little experience into that particular field. If suppose, as I told, that if somebody is having a good, amount with them, so in that case, they think that where to utilize this amount. So nowadays, they used to invest into the startup. So for getting the knowledge about the startup ecosystem is quite difficult. So they need some time. So that's why the little experience was there. Now, time for due diligence. Completely easily by the angel investor in the proper time, while the venture capitalists used to take some time for the due diligence. Due diligence in the sense, when we check the papers, what the startup told, that whether it is actually there or not, those kind of work is basically right. The kind of compliance seen and all those investment stage. So mostly the angel investors used to see the startups, to invest the startups into the early stage of them. And the venture capitalists see whether startup has generated some kind of traction or are in the growth stage. That time they usually prefer to invest. Right? Next, operational engagement. So when we have taken the equity of any of the startup, definitely we are a kind of into the board of directors. We have to give some time to the startup. If we see the venture capital, they give the sum hours per month to a startup, while the angel investors, they give the sum of the hours per week. Means as compared to the when we see, they give more time to the startup. Exit strategies for the venture capitalists is very important. How you are going to exit? So there are certain terms and conditions, more number of terms and conditions there for the VC. While for the angel investor, they are comparatively less, and exit strategy are actually less important. Length of holding the period is almost the same for both of them, 3 to 5 or 3 to 8 years for both. So this is the basic difference between the angel investors and the VC fund. Now coming to the benefits of the, since it was the early stage startups investment. So as I told, this angel investment is a better option at the early stage, right? So what are the benefits? First thing is financial backing. You're getting a finance from angel investors, and you can use that for to run your own business or to convert it into the prototype or get some other traction. Second is mentorship. You are going to get good mentorship from the angel investors. They are going to help you out where, how to go into the market, what are the strategies you can help, or they can even connect you some of the good mentors. Right? Third thing is validation. Validation is something that provide your company that yes, you are a particular valid. I will give you a simple example. Usually, what happens earlier that usually people won't file the ITR. Whatever salary we are getting, we have to file an ITR everywhere. But it was not a compulsion kind of thing before that. Right? So we get the salary and we won't file the ITR. So we are not getting a validation. But if we are filing an ITR everywhere, so that ITR is basically a kind of validation document given from the government of India that yes, we are actually legal person into this, and this is basically our income. And that ITR, that is a valid document from the government, can be utilized in many of the places. Either say getting a job into the foreign countries or some other area, you can use that ITR for those purposes. So similar way, this validation is provided from those investors that yes, your company is a good company and this all the work into this company. So these are basically some of the main benefits of an angel investor. Right? Now they're coming to the criteria. There were certain criteria where the angel investors see how the startup is. They used to evaluate those startups. Right? First thing is they see the market potential. These are some of the main criteria. Market potential. You have an idea whether it is market is feasible or not, whether it can go to the market or not. So that is actually find out how potential the idea is. First thing is that. So they see into this that how much potential the ideas have. Second, competitive advantage. Like what is your USP? If I am just say developing this pen and we are already having say similar kind of pen from some other startup, right? So what is the USP? What is the difference? What is the main point? What are the benefits we are adding into? What are the innovation we are adding into? That is known as USP. So that is a competitive advantage which gives me as compared to others. I will give you one example into that case also. Like we have the Maruti, we have the Hyundai, these kind of companies into the market. If just suppose there were two cars, one is developed by Maruti, one is developed by a new company. Both are costing, say one is costing, Maruti one is costing 3 lakhs and the other one is costing 2,80,000 something. Right? So if I will give you 3 lakh rupees and tell you to buy a car, which one you are going to buy? So the most of the answers are we are going to buy a Maruti car. Why? Because that is a valid company and yes, we know that we are trusting. But if we have to buy this second new startup car, so we have to see what additional features are added. If I'm going to provide say some 5 or 10 additional features into it, which are actually supposed to be coming to in a price of 1 lakh or 1.5 lakh more as compared to the Maruti car, so definitely we are going to buy a new company car. So that is the competitive advantage where the USP is seen by the investor. Next, the founder experience. If I'm having experience into the AI field and my startup is based on the AI, so the investors see, since I am from this particular field, I can work easily with the startup. So suppose I don't know ABCD of the AI and I have opened an AI startup. Investor definitely look how I'm going to run a startup because I don't have a founder who is working into the AI or a strong team who is actually working with the AI. So that is the criteria which the investor. Next, the financial projects. The investor used to see how the financial projections will go for a startup so that if I'm going to invest the amount of say 20 lakhs now, I can get more than that in the coming future. That is the financial project. So these are basically the 4 criteria for the investment. Now the process, how the process flow, investment process. So first thing is pitching will go. Pitching means you are going to pitch in front of the investor about your idea, what your idea is, and how it is different and the business model. Or there are certain slides which are actually required in the pitch. Okay. Next, once you are selected in the pitch, then the due diligence will. So all the checking all the papers and the finance, everything will be checked for the due diligence. And third one is term sheet. Your valuation was done and the investment was given to your startup that this is the investment, please go ahead. So this is basically the normal process flow for the investment. Now coming to the key consideration for entrepreneurs seeking angel funding. What actually you have to consider into your business idea. First thing is valuation. You have to align the expectations of the investor as per the valuation was concerned, right? And yes, valuation and turnover, these are 2 different concepts, right? The valuation will be more than the turnover. The valuation will be basically done, if I would give a simple example. So assets which your company is having, the funding which you are having, so everything will look into that particular case, and then the valuation work. Next, the control. The investment terms are properly controlled or not, that you have to see. If I am having a 1 CR of fund with my startup, I have to properly control and manage the investment in every case, right? Then the fit. Whether my goals are actually getting aligned with the investors or not, it is fitting into the market or not, everything we need to. And the last one is reputation. If we have given an option of 3 investors, one is a well-known, second is at a middle stage, and third one is a very lower known by the society. So we have to see who is actually well-known into the society so that their image can help our startup to grow, right? These are basically the key considerations. So this is basically the conclusion. How these are the things which we need to see, and then we have to go for the investment route so that we can raise. And yes, there were different investors and who look as per the different criteria. If I would say, if I am basically from the agri-tech field and I am going to invest into the agri-tech field, and suppose some startup came from a robotic field to me, so I will look into the thing that if it is not very much innovative, so I will try to avoid it. I am going to use some kind of excuses that yes, this is not particular, don't have this particular thing, or your startup is not up to that level. But don't get demotivated in that case. You can be motivated, get to your mentors, try to take their help, and try to pitch in front of the proper investor who is actually from your field. That is what I would say as far as the investment is concerned. Like all of you have seen this Shark Tank, right? Excuses, ये मेरी expertise नहीं, yet sometimes it is true also, but many of the time what happens, ये मेरी expertise नहीं है, right? So if I don't have expertise, I'm not going to go in. So as I told, आप अपने expertise के हिसाब से investor ढूंढो, बाहर जाना या खराब है या हम भी बना लेंगे, तो ऐसे भी बहुत सारे स्टार्टअप्स हैं जिन्होंने बहुत अच्छा परफॉर्म किया है, इवन गेटिंग रिजेक्टेड फ्रॉम द स्टार्ट, राइट? सो दिस इज नॉट द इश्यू. अगर कोई इन्वेस्टर आपको रिजेक्ट करता है किसी भी सिचुएशन में, you don't have to get worried about it, right? So just be in touch with your mentors and take guidance from them. So that's all for this session. I would say I'm open for the questions.
Any of the students have any question, they may switch on their mic and ask the question.
Shall I stop sharing my screen?
Any of the student have any question, they can ask. They can unmute themselves and they can ask the question. So I think they don't have any doubts. So we can wrap up the session. So thanks a lot, Mr. Ravindra Kumar, for sharing your views and knowledge with us. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you.